Assalamu alaikum. I'm Layla Abdullah-Poulos, and welcome to NbA Muslim Authors Speak. You get to watch me review the books. Now, this is my chance to interview the authors so that readers can know them better. And the author to grace us with her presence today is Karimah Grayson. Assalamu alaikum, Karimah, and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for doing this interview. So let's get to know a little bit about Karimah. Karimah Grayson is a Muslim American author, originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She now resides in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Is it hot down there?
Yeah.
That's a silly question. Karimah is married with 4 adult children and 2 grandsons. By profession, she's an educator and enjoys watching her students mature into adulthood. And she is excited to use her authorship to share American Muslim experiences with the world. Karimah is the author of The Shoulders on Which I Stand, Doria Takes a Stance, and Ariba's Dilemma, Love or Deen. You can follow Karimah on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and LinkedIn, as well as her author's blogs. I'll post all of her links in the description section. Thank you very much once again for joining us, Karimah.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's get out the gate. First of all, everyone, fair warning. Okay, Karimah is a history teacher, and everyone that knows me knows that I have a degree in history. So some stuff may pop off a little bit. If we go off on a little rant, just forgive us for it. Okay, so now, Karimah, can you let listeners know or viewers know what's some of the motivating factors behind your writing? What makes you choose to write?
Okay, what made me choose to write is one of my close friends, author Nasheed Jackson, started writing, and he was telling me how he was doing it, and I said, hey, I could do this too. I've always had the desire to write, but I've never sat down to do it. So one day I just decided, it was Ramadan 2014, and I decided, let me sit down and write. And then I learned about this thing called NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, which is the month of November. And I decided, hey, let me give it a try. Write 50,000 words in 1 month, and alhamdulillah, I did it.
50,000 words in 1 month. Okay. That's not an easy feat at all.
Yeah. And while teaching and grading, it was
Well, what
it
kept you
was
going to do that? Because I know a lot of authors have other professions and other endeavors, social endeavors and communal endeavors that in which they're engaged. So what kept you motivated to write 50,000 words in that little amount of time?
I have an internal locus of control. So I am in competition with myself. And I said at the beginning, well, the end of October, that I'm going to do it. So sometimes I missed a day or two. So I was typing like 20,000 words in one day. But I just felt that I wanted to do it. I wanted to see if I could do it. So I just stuck with what I had set the goal for.
Okay, so now you're an educator. So has that interfered with your writing at all? How do you manage to do both? Be a writer that can write at that level of writing and also still educate? Because you said you grade papers and everything like that, and I homeschool my kids, and I barely have time to use the bathroom, let alone write 50,000 words. So how does your profession as an educator help or hinder your writing processes?
I say it hinders my writing. The two books that I've written, one I did in the summer, I have a lot of time in the summer to take the time to do that. But the one in November that I wrote over a year, almost 2 years ago, I was really stressed because I did have a lot of papers to grade and everything to do at work as well as reading. So the reason I say it hinders me because I have a lot of stories in my head and titles written, but I've not really had the opportunity to write anymore because this past school year was very stressful. So it does hinder me from being able to write as consistently as I would like.
Okay. Now, see, you said you have a lot of stories in your head. I hear that from a lot of authors that they have these stories in their head, and how do you decide which story is going to come out of your head? If you have all these stories swimming around in your head and all these concepts, how do you decide on what it is you're going to focus on writing at that particular time?
Okay, in addition to in my head, I have them all of the titles written down as well. And how I decide what I'm going to write, sometimes because like you said, I am a history teacher and I'm really into the news and everything. Sometimes when things are going on, and if I had that title there, I start writing based on some of the things that I see has been happening within a community, the country, or whatever. Regarding what I'm going to write, I start with an outline, and then I see where it's going. Um, and with it being, because I did take one class writing for Islamic writing, and it was telling you pick an ayat from the Quran and go from there. So it's just a variety of ways. But like I said, I've written these two books, and what I knew a lot of people as far as Ariba's Dilemma. I know of people who husbands or wives have passed away because of illness, and then they had other things like, so I've seen other people's lives happen that way. That's what made me write that one. And then the shoulders on which I stand, I always felt there was a story that needed to be told. They say if you don't see the story you want to read, write the story you want to read. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why.
Oh, so you mentioned Ariba's Dilemma. Okay, so let's talk about Ariba's Dilemma a little bit. And for anyone who has not read Ariba's Dilemma, it is a story about Ariba. She loses her husband to cancer, and at the same time, she becomes reacquainted with her long lost love, a non Muslim named Frankie. So the story follows the two of them as they kind of decide whether or not they're going to get back together. And there's one big problem that Frankie's not Muslim. And as we all know, marriage to a non Muslim man is not something that is not without problems, at least in Islam. And some people, I just say out and out unlawful. So Ariba is attracted to a non Muslim man, which is really interesting because it's been my experience in American Muslim culture and as well as in the American Muslim fiction that I've been reading that that doesn't really happen. You kind of broken out of the box a little bit because there is room for a Muslim man to be attracted to a non-Muslim woman, and there are plenty of books written about that by NbA Muslim authors and other American Muslim authors. However, you broke the mold. You have a Muslim woman attracted to a non-Muslim man. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I was born and raised Muslim, and I know of people, and I possibly may have at one time been interested in a non-Muslim person, and it's a
Wow.
reality. I mean, it's real, and unfortunately, some people really don't look at us as thinking human. Okay, not
Mm.
don't say thinking, but they feel men have a feeling, and women are just sitting there waiting for a man to pick them from the tree. Like, oh, I'm sitting here, please come and grab me, and it's not always the case.
Well, that's very true. I know that that's not something that's exclusive to Islam, but it is something that is an issue in Islam. And it's this whole idea that Muslim women are not a part of the sexual dialogue that takes place. They're very dormant and passive. And so they're just basically waiting for a good man to come and utilize them, not necessarily even liven them up, but utilize them. However, the fact of the matter is that just like every other woman on the face of the earth and every other human being on the face of the earth, Muslim women are sexual beings as well, and they can be attracted to people despite the fact that they're not Muslim. I think that there's this prevailing idea that the only thing that attracts a Muslim woman is a man that shows obvious markers of being Muslim. So having a beard, going to the masjid, having a turban, and so for some reason we're like completely blind to any other male that doesn't exhibit those markers, and that's definitely not the case. Definitely not the case in this book, and it's definitely not the case in the Muslim world or in the American Muslim culture. You do have these attractions, and Ariba struggles with it because even though you may be applying your faith, it can definitely be, I don't want to say jeopardized, but there can definitely be issues that can make it problematic to properly apply your faith if the individual that you're interested in isn't a part of the Islamic faith. It's problematic for men, but it's even more so for women. So that's something that Ariba goes through. Now, one thing that I do find interesting about Ariba is that she definitely is not dormant. She does a little bit of manipulating situations herself so that she could get closer to Frankie. I mean, there are a couple of scenes where I'm just like, well, you're not very demure, are you? You know, and she's like, when she runs, like, trying to arrange rendezvous with him, and some of the things she says to him in private messaging on social media, she definitely is a part of the dialogue with him on whether or not she decides to be with him, which I find very interesting because she goes back and forth. And throughout the novel, you're not totally certain, even after things are resolved between her and Frankie, you still find, I found myself scratching my head. You know, if things hadn't turned out the way that she wanted them to, would she still have been with Frankie? I'm not 100% sure that she would have rejected him if he didn't become Muslim. What do you think?
I think you may be right, and alhamdulillah that I was answered. But yeah, she was in a real, that's why it was called Love or Deem, Ariba's Dilemma, because it's real. The people have real feelings, and as we know, we're not to associate partners with the law, and you don't want to have any shirk, but at the same time, you're just a human being. And so you're right. She was, when she was going to travel to San Diego, who stopped her from coming? She didn't stop herself. So
She certainly did not.
did not stop herself.
She was ready to go.
So
she was ready to go. Well, the fact of the matter is that you can still love Allah and not be completely perfect about how with your relationship with him or your obedience to him or how you interact and apply your religion in your everyday life, and you can still love Allah. And so one of the things that I liked about the struggle that Ariba went through is that that it shows that. I mean, there is a trend of Muslim women who are marrying non-Muslim men because they're finding love with these men despite the fact that they're not Muslim. Now, wherever you stand on it, whether you're just like, oh, it's completely haram and form of kufr, or if you're like, well, why not? If they love each other, wherever you stand in that spectrum, the fact of the matter is that the women that have to make these decisions because of the Islamic dictates about Muslim women and relationships with non-Muslim men, they still have to come to those decisions on exactly what it is they're going to do with their relationship with their Lord and their relationship with this person with whom they're in love. And that's not an easy decision. And that's the thing, is that you didn't make it an easy decision for Ariba. She had to really struggle with it. She struggled within herself. She struggled with her family, because her father was like, absolutely not. It's not going to happen. And she struggled because one of the other things that she had to contend with was that as a widow, she was now a single woman. And there is also something that happens in American Muslim culture. It may happen globally, I don't know. And that is this aversion for married Muslim women to interact too closely with single Muslim women, whether you're single because you've never been married, or you're divorced, or you're widowed like Ariba, you're still without a spouse. And so there's certain dynamics that happen between you and some, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of married Muslim women, where they may shun you or keep you at arm's distance. So in Ariba's dilemma, she very much wanted to interact with Muslim women, married Muslim women, and they weren't having it. Okay, they didn't want to interact with her, which made her even more lonely. And so there's just really this tendency for married women to excuse single women because of what I think is the threat of polygamy. And so you even address that in Ariba's dilemma.
yes. So polygyny and I say polygyny because polygamy means you can have multiple partners, male or female, but in Islam it's polygyny. They can have multiple wives. Um, Polygyny is what I've seen in African American community. A lot of people really, a lot of men want to embrace it, and there are women as well that want to, but at the same time, there are some that are afraid of, maybe not afraid, but the husbands will tell the wife, "Hey, I see this new sister here. Go see if she wants a husband." And they actually have the wife doing the vetting process. So it's it's something. And it's a real serious, because you may have insecure women, maybe because maybe the husband has taken a second wife before and then divorced that one and ready to take another wife. It could be a variety of things. It's not as simple as take another wife or not. It's such a complex situation.
Which I find a little incredible, and this is just my personal view about a man going to his current spouse to have her broker a relationship with another person. That in itself could be ripe with its own dilemmas. And so it just seems to me a little bit odd that someone would do that, especially since there are so many ways that a Muslim man can inquire about about a woman without involving his current spouse. So the thought of a man doing that, personally for me, I find a little, sleazy. But again, there's a lot of things that are going on. Maybe some of it is sleazy, maybe some of it is not. You can't. That's the one thing about aspects of the American Islamic culture, is that what may seem off-putting to someone outside of the culture, or even some people inside of the culture, it's not something that runs across the whole gamut of every single Muslim feels this way about it. That's why I was kind of put that caveat, like my own personal thing. And so, polygamy is something that is seen as a threat by Muslim women, and there's kind of like this pendulum swing where it has become an issue, despite whether or not all the parties that are involved in it are okay with being involved in it, because there's been so much misapplication of polygamy, and Muslim authors really have a lot of storylines with those problems, so just because of that, when it is functional and when it is working, and when all the parties that are involved in it are okay with being involved with it, the surrounding community, they may find themselves being treated a certain way by the surrounding community because of this almost allergy that there is, and hypersensitivity, and the thought that it may be my husband too. So even so much so that if there is one functional polygamous family in a community, it may be considered a threat, because that functionality then serves to show that it can be done, and it may happen to me, and I don't want it to happen to me. So it's a very, very complex issue. And even just this thought that you had mentioned earlier about the male culture, the American Muslim male culture, just really pushing and promoting polygamy as well.
Yes, and I've known of situations where people even try to shame a brother for not having a second wife. What do you mean you don't have a second wife? And some of these brothers, I say, they have not zero wives, but yeah, people want to make it like that is a necessity, like it's flawed or it's
A pillar?
required. Yeah.
It's a pillar. Polygamy pillar right after Hajj. Polygamy. I remember when one of the things that I noticed when I converted was that polygamy was brought front and center very, very quickly. That was something that I think I learned even before I really properly learned all the pillars of Islam, all the 5 pillars. So, like you have your testimony, and then you have the prayer and the fasting, and the charity and the pilgrimage. I think before I even really got to explore those things and learn about those things, I think it was pretty much the testimony, polygamy. Like everyone wanted me to know about it right away. So there's definitely that issue of polygamy, and even just like this general idea that all Muslim men want to be involved in polygamy, which I discussed in my last interview, that is simply not the case, and that all Muslim women are averse to polygamy, which is simply not the case. It's really about finding that balance. Okay, and so Ariba didn't have to deal with that, fortunately. So let's move on. Okay. So another thing that I liked about both of your books, Ariba's Dilemma and The Shoulders on Which I Stand, is that they both included history in them. You, in Ariba's Dilemma, you mentioned that her parents were part of the Black Panther Party, and that urged them to explore Islam, and they ultimately became Muslim. They were actually in the Black Panther Party with Frankie's mother. And so that's how Ariba and Frankie knew each other. And so then they became Muslim, where Frankie and his mom did not. And you also address a lot of different histories in The Shoulders on Which We Stand. So can you tell me a little bit why it is that you add history in your novels? Oh, I think we lost her. Okay, so we're gonna try and get her back. I think maybe we lost her in her connection, Karimah in her connection. So we're gonna try to get her back. So I'll tell you a little bit. I'll tell everyone a little bit about a little bit more about Karimah's writing and the fact that she does include history, which I think is really very, very important, because it's a way of. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
Alhamdulillah. No, it's no problem. It happens. It happens. It's no problem. I'll just letting viewers know about your inclusion of history in your novels. And so in Ariba's Dilemma, you included the Black Panther Party and her parents being a part of the Black Panther Party, which led them to explore Islam and ultimately become Muslim. And you also include Muslim history, as well as other American Muslim history, as well as other histories in The Shoulders on Which I Stand. So can you let us know a little bit about why it is that you include history in your novels?
Okay, I include history in my novels because I am a history teacher, as Layla stated earlier. But also, there's a narrative going around in the United States that America was all white before, or that other people are just like an aside to American history, when in reality, if you look at the true history of the United States, multiple cultures are totally involved in the growth and the greatness that this country is. So I put it in there because I was taking a reading course to teach reading to students, and I was learning some strategies, and I figured I could incorporate those strategies within the book, and it would help because my book isn't studied just for blacks or just for Muslims. I want people as a whole to get to know us as Muslims, us as black people, and to also realize, don't feel that because you may be Native American or Chinese or Japanese or Indian that you're not part of this American history narrative.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned before, American history in America, okay, is extremely Eurocentric, and there's a lot of erasure of other cultures and the contributions of other cultures, and just the histories of other cultures. It's very much the lion hunter telling the tale. So that old African proverb about if the lion told the tale, it'd be a different tale. And it really does come down to the need to maintain this narrative that feeds into white supremacy. This country has a very strong systemic race system, and it's rooted in white supremacy. And so in order for that to perpetuate, it really, everyone has to be indoctrinated in this system that promotes white supremacy. Whites and non-whites as well mutually have to be indoctrinated into this. So by keeping the narrative one where whites are seen in a very positive light consistently and constantly, and mitigating those very, very damaging historical things that whites in this country did uh, helps to promote that white supremacy. I mean, if everyone learned, say for instance, slavery from the aspect of the African slave and the descendants of the African slaves, be a totally different story. Right now, in the majority of history books, we're just like a little paragraph, and the paragraph very much makes it seem like it wasn't that big a deal. And that's the reason why you can have people like Bill O'Reilly, which I think is a really good recent example, saying that, you know, yeah, black slaves helped build the White House, but that was all right. They were well fed. But that's what the historical narrative teaches you. I mean, from the time that you can learn any type of history, it's very, very Eurocentric, and it plays up certain aspects of history and plays down other aspects of history. I mean, by virtue of the fact that you have preschoolers celebrating Columbus Day, a man that was a mass murderer. You know, if you look at it from the Native American, the First Peoples perspective, this man was a killer. But yet, you have a day off because of that to celebrate him. Our young children make these little boats and everything like that because why? It feeds that narrative of white supremacy. If you told Wounded Knee or Little Bighorn or the railways, the building of the railways from the perspective of Chinese Americans, or if you told if people really learned about the internment of Japanese citizens, it would be a totally different World War II story. You know, there's always like this thing. Oh well, it was the best generation, the greatest generation, and the best generation, and that may very well be that they did that, but these things also happen. So if you're constantly having to look at it from other perspectives, you get to humanize people that are outside of your culture, and that can't happen if white supremacy is if white supremacy is going to perpetuate. You can't humanize people. White supremacy doesn't work well with humanization and appreciation for differences. So I think that's the reason why it's so Eurocentric, and it goes all the way. I mean, even in higher education, where I am. I mean, in the state where I live, New York, you have to satisfy certain education requirements in order to get your degree if you go to a state school. And so there are different areas of study. Okay, one area of study is Western Civ. Another area of study is U.S. history. And another area of study is other world civilizations. So right off the bat, everybody else kind of gets thrown in. All of these great civilizations get thrown in together. But what is predominant is this whole idea of promoting this very Eurocentric, I find very Christian centric as well, but that's a whole other thing. Paradigm of history.
And to piggyback on you're saying the Eurocentric narrative, they even decide who we consider are our African American heroes. Hence, in The Shoulders on Which I Stand, I say the African American Trinity. You can, at the beginning, now that all the schools, or a lot of schools are starting now, or will be starting soon, look in any history room and you see the posters on the room, and you will see Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, and Rosa Parks. Now, I am not taking anything away from those three people because they've done tremendous things, but they weren't the only ones. But if you talk to anyone that was mostly public school raised and their parents were not aware, and you ask them about African American people, more times than not, you're going to get the African American Trinity. So in that narrative, and when you say it's on a Christian perspective, I didn't think about that until, like we said, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were contemporaries, but Malcolm X is not Christian. So you're on.
Well, even when you look at that Trinity, I mean, in particular, Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman, it's very, very superficial. The way that they teach about these two individuals who were extremely radical people for their time. I mean, Harriet Tubman, they say, well, she helped free the slaves in the Underground Railroad, but she was also a spy, and she helped, was one of the most successful missions that the Union had, when she went down the Mississippi River. They kept jumping off the boat and doing raids. She led that, but you don't learn about that about that aspect of her. And Martin Luther King was very radical, and even everyone's like, "I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream," which was wonderful. But did they really even read some of his works where he says that, where he said things like, white people will destroy this country before they will allow the black man to have any humanity? See, they leave that part of Martin Luther King out of it. And it's funny because I didn't learn it until my boss, who studies Martin Luther King as part of her doctorate, really kind of like schooled me. So she had to school me. Hi, Mildred. She had to school me about it. So there definitely is this, not only whitewashing, but just even taking those non-whites who have done some really significant things to progress this country, and try to make it seem like whites did it by themselves, and they really didn't. Many whites had a big role to play in it, but it wasn't exclusive. So this country's never been white, and it hasn't progressed exclusively because of the actions of whites either. Subjugated people have played a large part in making this country even at the level of greatness that it is right now, and they're constantly ignored because of it in the broader sense of history. And so you including those things in your book is very, very helpful. Now, has anyone reacted to the fact that you include history in your book?
Yeah, well, a few of my coworkers have read it, and actually they never thought about certain things until they read the book. And when they come across it, they like, look, that's what you were talking about, the African American Trinity, or wow, why did this happen? Because within that book, it's a lot of stories going within the book, and one is the culture of a school. And a couple of months after I wrote the book, I remember the school, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was in Chicago, and the teacher got fired for teaching African American history. And I was in awe of it, because I'm like, hey, that's what I just wrote in my book. So I do have people that say, hey, this is thought provoking. I have one coworker, he gives it to the students if they have to use a bathroom. They say, well, here he made it his hall pass. You got to read a page before you can go on. And he sent students to ask me questions about certain things. So I have been receiving pretty good feedback about the books, and even pointing out about the history, because people don't realize what they don't know or what they're fed until someone points it out. Like, hey, they fed you poop. Didn't you want ice cream?
Now, do you just focus on Black history?
No, no, because this country, everyone, I call it mosaic, because a melting pot is when everything gets into the pot, melts, and it all becomes one. A mosaic is like if you see the tiles, and you could differentiate the blue tiles from the yellow tiles from the white tiles. So they all are part of this whole tile area, but you can still differentiate each part of it. So the Native American
Uh-oh. I think we would be losing, like we lost her again.
To do so everyone is included, because our country needs to be inclusive. Are you there?
Can you go back like 3 sentences, because you kind of like lagged a little bit?
Okay. Yes, I include everyone in it, because everyone is a part of making this country how it is. Blacks can't say they did it all. Whites can't say they did it all. The Chinese there. We have everyone together that made this a way. So in order for students not to feel marginalized, like non-black and non-white, because I have a lot of students, they say, well, you always talk about blacks and whites. What about Hispanics? What about Chinese?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I include everyone within it, because it's a narrative that needs to be, everyone needs to know that that's how you can feel part of the country, if you know that people view you as part of the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's very, very important because I know, and let's bring it even now to more focused on the American Muslim culture. And the fact that there is this tendency, even in the American Muslim culture, to have this kind of erasure. You know, Black Muslims go through it all the time, where about the only thing that you hear about when it comes to the Black Muslim history in this country is Malcolm X and now slavery. Oh, you know, just to kind of like verify that Muslims have been here for centuries. But look, the Black slaves came, and so that means that we're not really foreigners because the Black slaves came and they were Muslim too. But when you go into an American Muslim community, you're not treated. No one's like it's an American Muslim community that I go into. No one knows my name. No one's glad I came or anything like that. And no one definitely is interested in not only my history and my heritage, but even current issues that affect me as a Black person in the United States, because there's even just like this total ignorance when it comes to how the intersection of race and religion play a significant role in the Black American Muslim experience. So I think that American Muslims in their totality could benefit greatly from learning more than just what is now the common diatribe of non-Black American Muslims. Well, Malcolm X was Muslim, Muhammad Ali was Muslim, and you had some Black Muslim slaves. No, it's a lot more complex than that, and because it's very, very important for us to learn it in order to appreciate it and understand how the role of race in this country, how the role of race, the intersection of race affects Black Muslims in this country. And then hopefully with that appreciation, there will come some growth and some allyship and some real solidarity. Okay, because right now there's a little bit of a problem when it comes to that. So now, in the future, do you intend on continuing to use history in your books?
More than likely, yes, because right now I'm taking a course on writing historical fiction, and it's really a cool thing. So, yes, I do. Because I feel without knowing your history, well, not just that. When you're taught history, it's so dry and boring for the most part. I think it's by design. They tell everybody get into science and math, because if you learn history, people will be like, wait a minute, this happened 10 years ago. You're doing the same thing over and over again. So I think bringing history in, but making it on a fictional level where it could be a little bit more entertaining, that it could bring more people towards paying attention to what's going on, what has happened in the history. And as you stated before, you say what the African statement is, the story is told by the lion killer or the hunter. I say, I've also heard that the story is written by the victor, not the victim.
Yeah,
so
now
that we can tell our own stories based on I can't tell you your perception is wrong and mine is right. But that's what we've been told all of our life is, no, it's no way that that's right. It's different. So bringing in a perception and then opening up the door for conversation, because the only way we can get to know each other is by conversing with one another.
No, definitely. And the only way that we can converse with one another is if we, first of all, appreciate those nuances that make up our cultural identities, and then respect them and move forward based on the needs of those cultural identities. I think that is something that's very, very important. So
it's a little static. I said it's a little
static.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Hold on, let me try and fix that. So see, I said that great thing too.
Well, I heard you, but it's just I know you were concerned about the static.
I know I don't know. Sometimes it's like this room, it gets that way, and I apologize again to our viewers for that. But it's live and it's the internet, and it happens sometimes. I was just saying how important it is for us to learn about each other and our cultural identities and our histories and heritages, and appreciate them and respect them and utilize those differences when we're moving forward. When we're moving forward together in solidarity, to understand and to move forward according to the needs of each other, which can be very, very different. And I think learning about the history plays an extremely significant role in that. So I'm really looking forward to more books with history and historical fiction. I can't wait for that one, because romance is really the genre that I love, but I really like historical fiction as well. And I know that there can be a lot of license when it comes to historical fiction, but not too much. Not too much. So I really can't wait for that. And there isn't really an author out there an NbA author that I've found that writes bona fide historical fiction. So I really can't wait to read that, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for joining me, Karimah, and talking with me and letting viewers get to know you a little bit better. And you can read Ariva's Dilemma and The Shoulders on Which I Stand. They're available on Amazon. They're available in paperback and in Kindle as well. And follow Karimah on Twitter and Facebook, and read our author's blog. She has quite some interesting articles, and you're very dedicated to writing and also supporting other writers, which I think is really, really great. So may Allah bless you for that, and give you fortitude in continuing that work, because writing is not an easy thing. Reading about it and reviewing it is a little bit easier. So thank you once again. And if you want to know more about the work that I do with NbA Muslims, please follow the NbA Muslim Twitter and also the Facebook page, and check out nbamuslims.com. And thank you again, Karimah. And as soon as I get a minute, then I'll review a book. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you.